The setup, Paramount Studios, March 1964. Paramount Studios, March 1964. A Tuesday afternoon. The kind of gray Los Angeles day where the smog hung low over the studio lot, making everything look muted, dull. Dean Martin sat in a leather chair in the executive conference room on the third floor of the main building. Around the table sat 5 men in expensive suits. Producers, studio executives, money men. They wanted something from Dean, something big. On the table in front of him was a contract, 32 pages, single-spaced, legal language that would take a lawyer 3 hours to read properly. But Dean didn't need 3 hours. He'd already read it twice, knew exactly what it said, knew exactly what they were asking. The number at the bottom was $1 million. In 1964, $1 million was generational wealth. It was what most people couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes. It was houses, cars, security for your children, your grandchildren. It was everything. And Dean Martin was being asked to turn it down. Not because the job was beneath him, not because the script was bad, not because of scheduling conflicts or creative differences, because of one clause, one single paragraph on page 17 that Dean's lawyer had circled in red ink the night before. To understand why this moment mattered, you need to understand where Dean Martin came from. Steubenville, Ohio, the son of an Italian immigrant barber, a kid who spoke no English until he was 5 years old, who dropped out of school in the 10th grade, who worked as a bootlegger, a card dealer, a gas station attendant before he ever stepped on a stage. Dean had clawed his way up, every step earned, every success fought for. By 1964, he'd made it, really made it. The Martin and Lewis partnership had made him famous in the early 50s. The split in 1956 was supposed to end his career. Everyone said Jerry was the talent, Dean was just the straight man, the pretty face. They were wrong. Dean proved them wrong by becoming bigger than he'd ever been with Jerry. Movies, television, music, Vegas. He was everywhere. The coolest man in America, maybe the world. But success came with compromise, always did in Hollywood. Dean had made 23 films by 1964, some good, some great, some he wasn't proud of. That's how the studio system worked. You signed a contract, you made the pictures they told you to make, you smiled, you cashed the check, you showed up on set. But this contract was different. Richard Zanuck, head of production at Paramount, sat across from Dean, young, ambitious, son of Darryl Zanuck, a man who'd inherited power and wielded it carefully. Dean, this is the deal of the decade. 5 pictures, $1 million guaranteed, plus percentage points on the back end. You could make $2 million, maybe 3 if the pictures perform. Dean didn't respond, just sat there, calm, a cigarette burning in the ashtray next to him. Another executive, Harold Mirisch, leaned forward. We're talking about top-tier productions, Dean, A-list directors, Oscar-caliber scripts. This isn't beach party movies or cheap westerns. This is prestige. I read the contract, Dean said quietly. Then you know it's the best deal in Hollywood right now, Zanuck said. I read page 17, too. The room went quiet. Zanuck glanced at Mirisch. Mirisch looked at his notes. You mean the approval clause. I mean the lack of approval clause. The confrontation. Dean picked up the contract, flipped to page 17, read aloud. The artist agrees to accept all roles, scripts, directors, and co-stars as determined by the studio without right of refusal or consultation. He put the contract down. That's standard language, Dean, Mirisch said. Every contract has similar provisions. Not mine. You've signed contracts with similar clauses before. That was before. This is now. Zanuck leaned back in his chair. Dean, let me be frank. You're 46 years old. You've had an incredible run. But this business changes fast. Right now, you're hot. 5 years from now? 10? Who knows? This contract guarantees you security, financial security for the rest of your life. At what cost? At the cost of trusting us to make good decisions about your career. Dean smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had heard this pitch before. Trust you like United Artists trusted me when they wanted me to do the fortune cookie with Jack Lemmon, only they wanted to pay me half what they paid Jack because they figured I was desperate after the Lewis split? That was different, Mirish said. Or trust you like when Fox wanted me to star in Can-Tan but wouldn't let me have script approval and the movie turned out to be exactly I said it would be? Dean, we've learned from those mistakes. Have you? Dean interrupted. Because this contract tells me you haven't learned a damn thing. Zanuck's face hardened. What exactly are you saying?
I'm saying I won't sign a contract that treats me like I'm still the kid from Steubenville who'd do anything for a paycheck. I've earned the right to have a say in my career, to approve scripts, to have input on directors, to protect my reputation. Your reputation? Zanuck's voice rose slightly. Dean, we're offering you $1 million. We're not trying to destroy your reputation. No, you're trying to own it. There's a difference. The room fell silent again. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the studio lot, a truck backing up, someone shouting directions for a crane, the normal noise of Hollywood making movies. Finally, Mirish spoke. Dean, be reasonable. No actor gets full approval. Not even the biggest stars. It's not how this business works. Then maybe it's time the business changes. You're willing to walk away from $1 million over a contract clause? Dean stood up. I'm willing to walk away from $10 million if it means giving up control of my career. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. Zanuck stood too. Dean, sit down. Let's talk about this. We just did. We can negotiate, modify the language, give you approval on some things. All things, Dean said, or nothing. That's not realistic. Then we're done here. Dean walked toward the door. His hand was on the doorknob when Zanuck spoke again. If you walk out that door, this offer disappears. You understand that. We're not coming back with something better. Dean turned around, looked at each man in the room. I understand perfectly. You're telling me that if I don't agree to let you control every aspect of my career for the next 5 years, you'll take your money and go find someone more desperate, someone who needs it more than they need their dignity. That's exactly what you're saying. And you know what? Good luck finding that person, because it's not going to be me. He opened the door. Dean, Zanuck called out. Dean stopped but didn't turn around. You're making a mistake, a $1 million mistake. Dean looked back over his shoulder. The only mistake I'd be making is selling myself for money. I did that when I was young and desperate. I'm not desperate anymore. He walked out. The aftermath. Dean's car was parked in his reserved spot outside the executive building, a 1963 Cadillac Eldorado, white with red interior. He got in, started the engine, but didn't drive away. Just sat there. His hands gripped the steering wheel, tight, so tight his knuckles went white. $1 million. Gone. Just like that. He thought about his father, Gaetano, who'd cut hair for 50 cents, who'd worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week his entire life, and never made more than $3,000 in a single year. What would his father say about turning down $1 million? Dean knew the answer. His father would have told him to take it, would have called him crazy for walking away, would have said money like that doesn't come around twice. But his father had never been in Dean's position, had never had to choose between money and self-respect, between security and dignity. Dean started driving, not home, not to his manager's office, just driving through Los Angeles, no destination, trying to make sense of what he'd just done. He ended up at a diner on Sunset Boulevard, small place, nothing fancy, vinyl booths, checkered floor, smell of coffee and bacon grease. Dean sat at the counter, ordered coffee, black. The waitress recognized him.
"You're Dean Martin. Last time I checked. What are you doing here? Thought big stars ate at fancy restaurants. Sometimes I just want regular coffee." She poured his cup, moved on to other customers. Dean sat there for 2 hours, drinking coffee, watching people come and go. Normal people with normal lives, people who didn't have to make decisions about million-dollar contracts. His manager, Herman Citron, found him there around 6 p.m. "Dean, been looking everywhere for you. Paramount called, said you walked out of the meeting." "I did." Herman slid into the booth across from him. "Want to tell me what happened?" Dean told him everything. The contract, the approval clause, the confrontation, walking out. When he finished, Herman was quiet for a long time. "You turned down $1 million, Herman finally said. "I did." "Over contract approval?" "Yes." Herman rubbed his face with both hands. "Dean, I've been your manager for 8 years. I've seen you do some crazy things, but this might be the craziest. Or the smartest. How do you figure? Because if I'd signed that contract, I'd be theirs for 5 years. 5 years of making whatever movies they wanted, playing whatever roles they chose, working with whatever directors they assigned. No say, no control, just a puppet with their hand up my back. A puppet making $1 million. Still a puppet." Herman signaled the waitress for coffee. She brought it. He added 3 sugars, stirred slowly.
"You know what happens now," Herman said. "Word gets out you walked away from Paramount. Other studios hear about it. They'll think you're difficult, unreasonable, hard to work with. Let 'em think it. It could hurt your career. Or it could help it." "How?" Dean leaned forward.
"Herman, how many actors do you know who have real power in this town? Real control over their careers?"
"A handful, maybe less."
"Why? Why do so few have it?"
"Because the studios won't give it to them."
"Wrong. Because so few demand it. They're so grateful for the opportunity, so scared of losing it, they'll sign anything, give up anything, and the studios know it. That's why they keep offering these contracts, because most people will take them."
"And you won't?"
"Not anymore. I spent too many years taking what I was given, grateful for scraps. Now I want a seat at the table. If that means walking away from money, so be it." Herman sipped his coffee. "What if no one offers you a better deal? Then I'll produce my own movies, direct them, finance them independently, whatever it takes." "That's risky, Dean." "Everything's risky. Taking the Paramount deal was risky. Maybe I make $1 million. Maybe the movies flop and I'm stuck making garbage for 5 years. That's a risk too." They sat in silence. Finally, Herman smiled. "You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right." "Yeah?" "Yeah, and I'm going to help you. We're going to make this work. We're going to show Hollywood that actors can have power. Real power, not just money." They shook hands across the table. The industry response. Word spread fast. By the next morning, every agent, manager, and studio executive in Hollywood knew Dean Martin had walked away from a $1 million Paramount deal. The reactions were mixed. Some thought he was brave, standing up for actors' rights, fighting for creative control. Others thought he was an idiot, throwing away guaranteed money over pride. A few thought it was a negotiating tactic, that Dean would come crawling back to Paramount within a week, willing to take less money, but desperate to make some deal. They were all wrong. Dean didn't go back to Paramount, didn't call, didn't negotiate. Instead, he did something unexpected. He called a press conference. Going public. The Beverly Hilton, March 19, 1964. Dean sat behind a table facing 40 reporters. Cameras flashed, microphones clustered in front of him. He looked calm, relaxed, like he wasn't about to light a bomb under the studio system. "Thanks for coming," Dean began. "I want to talk about something that affects every actor in this town, contract approval." The reporters leaned forward. Dean continued. For decades, studios have controlled every aspect of actors' careers. They decide which movies we make, which roles we play, which directors we work with. They own us, not literally, but effectively. And most actors accept this because they're grateful for the work, afraid of being blacklisted, scared of losing opportunities. He paused. I'm not scared anymore, and I'm not grateful enough to give up my dignity. A reporter raised his hand. Mr. Martin, is it true you turned down $1 million from Paramount? Yes. Can you explain why? Because the contract required me to give up all creative approval, to let the studio make every decision about my career for the next 5 years. And I won't do that. Not for 1 million, not for 10 million, not for any amount of money. Another reporter. Are you saying actors should have the same power as studios? I'm saying actors should have some power. We're not asking to run the studios. We're asking for a voice, for the right to say no to projects that don't fit our abilities or our values, for the ability to protect our careers and our reputations. But don't studios take all the financial risk? They take risk, yes, but so do we. Our reputations are on the line, our careers. If a movie flops, the studio moves on to the next one. The actor, they might not work again for years. So don't tell me we don't have skin in the game. The questions kept coming. For 90 minutes, Dean answered every one. Honest, direct, unafraid. When it was over, he'd said what needed to be said. The next day, the headlines wrote themselves. Dean Martin declares war on Hollywood studios. 1 million wasn't enough. Dean demands creative control. Is Dean Martin crazy or revolutionary? The unexpected call. 3 days after the press conference, Dean got a phone call at home. It was Frank Sinatra. Dean, you magnificent bastard. Dean laughed. Hello, Frank. I just read about what you did, walking away from Paramount, the press conference, all of it. And I wish I'd thought of it first. Dean sat down. You agree with what I did?
Agree. I'm doing the same thing. I just called my lawyer, told him every contract I sign from now on includes creative approval, final cut approval, the whole deal. If they don't like it, they can find someone else. Frank, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You were right, Dean. We've been letting these studios push us around for too long, trading our power for paychecks. Well, not anymore. You started something, and I'm going to make sure it spreads. Over the next few weeks, other actors started making similar demands. Not everyone, not even most, but enough to matter. Burt Lancaster called his agent, wanted approval clauses in his next contract. Kirk Douglas did the same. William Holden, Gregory Peck, the biggest stars in Hollywood, one by one, started demanding what Dean had demanded. The studios pushed back, hard. They leaked stories to the press, called these actors greedy, ungrateful, difficult. But the actors didn't back down. And slowly, grudgingly, the studios started to negotiate. The breakthrough. 6 months after Dean walked away from Paramount, he got another call, this time from MGM. They wanted to make a deal. Not the same kind of deal Paramount had offered, a new kind of deal, one that gave Dean script approval, director approval, co-star approval. The money was less, $600,000 instead of $1 million, but Dean had what he wanted, control. He signed. The movie was The Sons of Katie Elder, filmed in 1965. Dean played opposite John Wayne. The director was Henry Hathaway. The script was solid, Western, action, drama. Dean had approved every element, and the movie was a hit. Box office success, critical acclaim, proof that giving actors creative control didn't doom projects to failure. Other studios noticed. Within a year, contract approval became standard for top-tier actors. Not universal, not automatic, but possible, negotiable. Dean Martin had changed Hollywood. The real victory. Years later, in 1973, Dean was being interviewed by Dick Cavett on television. Cavett asked him about the Paramount contract, about walking away from $1 million. Do you ever regret it? Cavett asked. Dean thought about it. No, never.
Not even for a moment? Dick, I've made a lot of money in my career, more than I ever dreamed of making when I was a kid in Steubenville. But the money isn't what matters. What matters is how you make it, whether you sell yourself or stay true to yourself. And you stayed true? I tried, not always successfully, but in that moment, with that contract, yeah, I stayed true. What would you say to young actors today facing similar choices? Dean looked directly at the camera. Know your worth, not just your financial worth, but your intrinsic worth as a human being. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to compromise your dignity for success. You don't. It might be harder, it might take longer, but in the end, you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror and like what you see. That's worth more than any paycheck. The audience applauded. The letter. When Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, 1995, his children found a letter in his desk drawer. It was dated March 15, 1964, written the night before his meeting at Paramount. The letter was addressed to himself. Dean, tomorrow you're going to walk into a room full of men who have more power than you, more money, more connections. They're going to offer you a deal that will make you rich beyond measure. Don't take it. Not because the money isn't real, not because the opportunity isn't legitimate, but because the cost is too high. They're going to ask you to give up control, to trust them with your career, your reputation, your legacy, and you can't do that. You've worked too hard, fought too long, sacrificed too much to hand over the reins now. You might fail, you might lose everything, but at least you'll fail on your own terms. At least you'll lose standing up instead of kneeling down. Remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Remember why you do this. Not for the money, not for the fame, for the craft, for the art, for the respect that comes from being true to yourself. Don't sell out. Not for $1 million, not for anything. Stay strong. Dean. His daughter Dina read the letter at his memorial service. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The legacy. That's the real story of March 1964. Not that Dean Martin walked away from $1 million, though he did. Not that he changed the Hollywood contract system, though he did that too. The real story is that Dean Martin understood something fundamental about success, about power, about dignity. Money can buy you things, security, comfort, luxury, but it can't buy you self-respect. That you have to earn, that you have to fight for, that you have to protect. And sometimes protecting it means walking away from opportunities, from guarantees, from everything the world tells you matters. Because what matters more than money is integrity. What matters more than success is staying true to yourself. What matters more than being rich is being able to look in the mirror and like the person looking back. Dean Martin knew that. And on a gray Tuesday in March 1964, he proved it by saying no, by walking away, by refusing to sell something that wasn't for sale. His dignity, his self-respect, his soul. That's the legacy. Not the movies he made, not the songs he sang, not even the laughs he gave millions of people. The legacy is showing the world that some things can't be bought, that some principles are worth more than any paycheck, that being true to yourself is the only success that really matters. Dean Martin lived that truth, and Hollywood was never the same.